Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us for the JS Mindset Weekly Call. My name's Denny. Today is Saturday, April 17, 2021, and joining me on the call today are my friends, Bill Holter, Jim Sinclair, and the famous Dave. This week I celebrated 48 years of marriage with my wife, and it's absolutely amazing to me how much the world has changed since we got married in 1973. The World Trade Center was dedicated a week before we got married, and the Watergate scandal was in full-blown discovery at the time. Secretariat won the Triple Crown of racing, and at the end of that year, the 25th Amendment became part of our Constitution. In short, 1973 was quite a year. Thank God my dad signed for me so I could get married. I have a feeling deep inside my soul that this year will go down in history with similar events that will be remembered as unbelievable. Only time will tell, and I guess I'm a lot like Jim in that one of the reasons I want to keep living is just to see what in the hell is going to happen next. I love Saturday afternoon with Jim and Bill and Dave, mostly because they help me put all of the noise in the world into perspective. We maybe have 1,000 listeners to these recordings each week, and I wish that more people could share in the wisdom these guys share with us. Each of them has an incredible resume and background of experience, and I'm just grateful to be able to ask them questions each and every week. Before we get to the questions for Jim and Bill and Dave, please be aware that in our conversation today with the boys, it's important to remember that we're not giving anybody investment advice. What we're trying to do is share our own personal perspectives of the economic world. Now, you can choose to add it to your own perspective, or you can choose to ignore it. In the end, we just want you to be prepared for what might certainly be some very crazy times ahead. Dave, I'm going to go to you first. If you live in New York City, your combined income tax rate for federal, state, and city taxes is now a little over 50% in the upper income levels. Dave, this is an incredible situation, and New York City is now worse than California, if that's even possible. Dave, I'm interested in your predictions or comments about what's about to happen in New York City.
They're going to pay their taxes, and they're going to suck it up, and there's really going to be no place to go, because no matter where you go, it's going to be occurring everywhere, Denny. We've had these conversations for years that money printing had consequences. One is you debase your currency, and everything that you need to purchase is going to go up in cost. Well, we've been going over that week after week after week after week. Well, some of this has to be paid for to a certain extent, especially on the state levels, because the state can't print their own money like the federal government does. But although if you look at the bailout of the pandemic bailout, they have managed to give a ton of money to cities, states, to patch holes in their budgets, which are there because of complete mismanagement. But aside from that, they're going to have to hit property taxes and the personal income tax because the states need revenue, Denny. At the end of the day, and this is some of the things that I've been arguing about this whole real estate bubble that we're going through, that ultimately all these people who are running around buying things willy-nilly, thinking that they're buying assets, are actually buying liabilities. And when I say buying liabilities, because come hell or high water, these towns and these cities that have amassed massive amount of employees, massive amount of infrastructure, equipment, whatever you want to, break it down to, whether you're in the United States or whether you're in another country, everybody still functions fairly similar. So what you have now is we're going to move through the massive inflation into the massive taxation to pay for it. Take Canada. Look at Canada's tax rates. Look at Europe's tax rates. I'll go back to a really quick story. Even way further than that, holy smokes. In the late 70s, I had a really good friend who was doing very well in the medical business. He was a doctor, and he had a very straightforward thought pattern on putting money away for his pension. his thought at the time was, I am not going to put it in a conventional pension plan and hope when I'm 65 years old, I'm going to get to take that money out at a tax rate that I have no idea what the tax rate is going to be at that time. Right now, my tax rate, this was when Reagan had butchered and really cut taxes. He said, I'm going to pay my taxes right now, and I'm going to take my money. And in so doing, I'm going to pay the tax now because I believe further down the road it's going to be significantly higher. Well, I should call that guy up, and actually we have crossed paths, and this was 30-something years ago, and that was actually a genius move because all these people who think they have their 401ks, and let's say it says $1 million, good luck trying to get that money out. They're coming for the money because they've given it away. They're printing it. You know, New York's paying, you know, I can't even, $15,000 to certain groups of people. And I'm sitting here going, well, where's this money going to come from? Well, Denny, they're telling you where it's going to come from. It's going to come from the people who have it. The people who have assets are just going to be attacked, and that's just how the system works. We could jump up and down and scream all we want. I'm going to move. Because for the last several days, I'm seeing all these ads for move to Ohio, move your business to Ohio. Yeah, move it there, and it's going to happen there too. And, you know, it's going to happen everywhere. It's not an isolated problem. The problem is rampant, and, you know, we've argued about it now for years and years and years here, and it's coming home to roost. So rather than beat the drum, just say we told you it was coming, and that we're here. And this is just the beginning of it. Wait till it really gets going.
Can I add something to that, David and Denny? When you were listing the taxes, don't forget wealth tax. Everything you have, a percentage of wealth tax, and that means, you know, every asset that you think you're buying is good and turning into a liability. That is absolutely correct, Bill. And after you finish with wealth tax, then think about value-added tax in that order. Okay? So there's many ways that they're going to have to give you, they're going to have to raise money to meet these outrageous trillion-dollar pork bills and that are coming out as advertised to be because of COVID and because of the unemployed in COVID. And then when you look at the bill, take a look at it. Remember, wealth tax and value-added tax in that line you just, grouping of taxes you just mentioned, David.
Jim, China has suddenly given domestic and international banks permission to import large amounts of gold into the country, and I'm guessing that they're planning on announcing a gold-backed yuan very soon. What will all of that mean to? Yeah, what will all of that mean to us here in the United States?
Well, it's going to mean that they're jumping the second reset, all right? They're going right past the first, which will be very intellectual, very establishment-oriented, PhD-type cures for problems like SDRs, which basically means nothing. And they're going to dressing their currency with gold, which is going to be a mainstay of free gold, the second reset. And they've been very clear that is happening. Okay, they didn't say it isn't speculation that they're going to back the currency. They've really said it. And backing is not convertibility. Backing is having. So they're going to dress their currency up. And what it's going to mean is that the war that's taking place, and it is a war, is not boots on the ground or hypersonic missiles. The war is economic, and the dollar is killing itself. The USDX is no measure of the dollar, and people really need to understand the USDX. That's an index of the U.S. dollar versus other currencies, is not a measure of the worth of the dollar. It's a measure of it in a foot race against the other currencies going lower. That means that if other currencies go lower faster, the dollar goes higher in that index. It's totally another illusion. the value of the U.S. dollar, and is one of David Perks on the line, I don't know, he's a friend of ours in Australia, is the buying power of the dollar, which is a commodity package. In other words, what can the dollar buy now versus what it could buy last year is really what you consume. And that is headed straight down like you talk about a fishing line. It is headed straight to the bottom. So the USDX is no measure of the dollar, and the dollar is falling out a bit. Now, what will the yuan do? Buy more. So measuring the USDX and the dollar against the yuan in the way they measure it now is no comparison of value. It's what it can buy. We are in an economic war, and the Chinese are doing exactly the right thing. Do we have gold at Fort Knox? Who knows? But bear this in mind. You can't have an audit of yourself. An audit is a independent third party's examination of your financials in which they randomly check for any improper or untoward actions. If the Bureau of Statistics was to audit Fort Knox, that's not an audit. Okay? So if the official auditors of the U.S. government audit themselves, how in the world can you call that an audit? I mean, if I audited myself, how could you call that an audit? If I was to be the auditor of TRX, how could you call that an audit? It isn't. You have to have a third party, and believe me, that's tough. It doesn't do your books. Not this party that does your books, not your accountants or your accounting firm. An auditing firm that audits the books is entirely different than an accounting firm. Do we really have any gold? Maybe we do. How about maybe we don't? Because what's the easiest thing to steal in the world? Something that has no title change. What's the only thing in the world that has no title change when it changes hands? Silver and gold. They don't talk. They're quiet. So if you were going to rob the United States government and you were in power, years ago, you would have emptied Fort Knox into your own storage somewhere, because no title change, no identity, no paper trail, no proof. The perfect crime. Now, the Chinese are very smart what they're doing, and they haven't just hinted. They've actually said they are going to do that. This is fact.
Bill, I read this week that Hugo Salinas Price suggested that Mexico might remonetize silver without the support of the central bank. That was an incredible read, and it would have profound effect in not only Mexico but the rest of the world. Remonetizing based on a metal without the backing of the central bank. What would be the ramifications of such a move by Mexico, Bill?
It wouldn't be a move by Mexico. That would be a totally separate, private move. I mean, you'd have to have the central bank to go along with that for it to work, or the central bank to fail, one or the other. And it may be a reason that the central bank does fail, is that people choose metallic money or metallic currency to save in versus the paper currency issued and mandated by the government.
You're saying it's not going to happen, or you're saying if it happened, other things would be taking place?
I think it ultimately is going to happen. I mean, this goes back to the ultimate reset. The ultimate reset is there has to be real money. There has to be something of value that backs the money. As far as this being done by the government, I don't see that happening. I can see them being forced to do it, but I don't see them deciding to do it.
Bill, I would back you up 100% on that. In time, when you get a second reset, if you've got silver, you're dressing your currency up with silver and gold, if you have it. But you've handled that question, in my opinion, brilliantly.
Now, Jim, don't go fluffing up him. He's got a big enough head anyway.
Hey, listen, the guy's gotten smarter than hell. I don't know where it happened. This man could write books. This is Adam Smith and Ricardo talking all at once.
Okay, all right. David, when you look at
he's grumpy. I know he's grumpy. And
God, is he grumpy?
And a party pooper.
David, when you look at the history books, fascism includes an unholy alliance between large corporations and the government. There are several large corporations who, almost on cue, have been showing their wokeness in the political arena. Major League Sports has been doing the same for months, but I'm beginning to sense some real fatigue from the public in watching all this. What I'm really trying to figure out is what will it mean for investors, and I'm seeing boycotts of Delta and Coca-Cola. I'm seeing longtime baseball fans that I grew up with just basically say, I'm done with them. I'm no longer a spectator. I'll watch college. I'll watch anything else. But I'm watching a complete disconnect of support from everyday citizens, from politics to pastimes. Dave, again, just your perspective on all that.
Well, Denny, the public has a very limited attention span. I don't think the public has the ability to boycott anything. I've tried to tell people for over 20 years, shut their TV off. Do you know how many people have done it? I know absolutely zero. I don't know about the rest of the world, but I do know about most of the people I know. They're very sheeple. They have their habits, and they don't change. They get up, they watch the same crap news channel every single day, in and out. They whine the same thing day in and day out, and then they still never do anything about it. The major corporations in our country and in the world know most people are incredibly soft. They want to be liked. They want to be happy. They want to have all the things that they've been told they're supposed to have. They live in this land that I call hopium. They live in hopium, and they live in this land called euphoria. And they aren't going to change. They may say they're going to change. They aren't changing. And I'll use as an example. Last year, everybody had to move away from the city, and they all moved up into the country. And all this sort. They're never going away. These people are never going away. They're here for good. Well, I'll tell you, they're all gone. They're gone. I've been saying to my wife all along, these people who moved out of the city and moved up into the country, they aren't staying here. What, are you out of your mind? There's nothing to do here. I mean, the public reacts. That's how the government controls the public. They could create a situation, and they know exactly how you're going to react to it. I don't care whether it's Pearl Harbor, the Gulf of Tonkin, the anthrax scare, the mushroom cloud that we were certain was coming out of Iraq, the chemical attack in Syria. They have algorithms that know exactly how long it'll take to break down. People aren't going to stop drinking Coca-Cola. People aren't going to stop going to NFL games. People aren't going to stop watching the NBA. And they will change everybody's mind, and yours included. Most people, it's why torture in a lot of situations works if it's soft torture. Hard torture, well, a person will tell you whatever you want to hear. Soft torture is let your neighbor have a really shiny car and everything beautiful in his life and not in your life. That's torture. That's how this whole stock market operation's being run on the country. Everybody wants to believe they're going to be a jillionaire, and they're going to hit it big, and we're going to have Bitcoin, and we're going to have all this stuff for nothing. And then you have the lower class, well, we're going to have all this stuff for nothing because the government's going to give us this. These are false beliefs. They live in hopium. And unfortunately, we could jump up and down and say, well, this is going to change everything. It doesn't change. They are in 100% control. I always joke, and it's not half-heartedly, we are in the matrix. We are in an information matrix. They possess all the data. They know more about us than we know about ourselves. They know our wants, our desires, our wishes. They know what our hot buttons are. Every single one of us is cataloged. If anybody thinks that this agenda is going to change and we're going to have this mass awakening, I'll tell them the Haley-Bot comet's coming. Jump on it. That's all I could add to that, Denny. We ain't changing.
Denny, can I add to that?
Go ahead, Bill. Yes.
Dave, I agree with a lot of what you said, and we over the years have not disagreed on many things. But just look at what's happened over the last 2 years with the ratings on the NFL, the ratings on the NBA. Before COVID, there were NFL stadiums that could hold 60, 70,000 people that would have 20,000. They weren't selling out. Same thing with NBA games. I don't think people are going to forget and just keep going on with their lives. I think they've pissed off the heartland, put it that way.
Let me add to that. Statistics would prove you wrong on that, Bill, because NASCAR was going through the same thing. We suffer from saturation. They overbuilt the stadiums, and there's only so many people that you could sucker into going and sitting through an afternoon, be it of NASCAR, football, basketball, baseball. We went through this with golf. We oversaturate every single market because there's misallocation of capital nonstop. And just as we're talking about people running away from taxes here to move there because they're cheaper, we went through this with every single stadium that's been built. These teams move all over the place to whoever's going to give them the most money to build out a stadium. And again, it's just misallocation of capital. I don't believe it's – I know so many hardcore football, baseball, hockey fans, and not one of them no longer watches. Not one of them. They may piss and moan about
Well,
this.
Dave, I am one of them, and I don't watch pro football anymore. Well, they started taking a knee, and I stopped watching. They started taking a knee, and the viewership on TV dropped, 25, 30%.
Yeah, well,
that didn't just happen because they overbuilt stadiums. It happened because these people are trying to bring politics into a sporting event where you want to watch the athleticism. You want to watch the game. You want to watch them play. I mean, I could give a crap what, some pro football player says I should do or how I should think or whatever. Same thing with Hollywood. I mean, you got these look at the box office. The box office, pre-COVID, the box office was already starting to crater. And that's because you got the Robert De Niro's of the world running around and telling you how wrong you are and you should be woke. And I just think that the average red-blooded American doesn't like it and is tuning out. And I think the statistics show that.
Well, we're going to have to disagree on that one, Mr. Bill, because I don't see people changing their habit. There's just long-term people don't change their habit. It's finances will change their habits. Viewerships may change, but I don't think that there is a cause and a correlation that would back up that's what's going on in pro sports. I agree that there is this woke movement taking place. Absolutely. But people aren't going to stop drinking Coca-Cola because of it. People aren't going to, I don't see it. People are very soft. They've made it through 9/11 and nothing's changed. They immediately went back to what they did. We went through the Iraq War. They went back to exactly what they did. With the dot-com bubble, they went back to exactly the way they were. With the housing bust in 2008, they went right back to Wall Street and sucked the game up one more time. Here we are yet again. So that's what I use as my logical conclusion that the public...
Well, Dave, we're here yet again from a financial standpoint, and that's based on what the Federal Reserve has been doing. I mean, the Federal Reserve, over the last 12 months, 78% of all dollars outstanding have been created in the last 12 months.
Absolutely, and I agree.
There's your cause for the bubble, and people are momentum followers, if you will. They see their neighbor getting rich. Oh, I got to do the same thing. I got to catch up. But what is allowing this to happen is freely printed money and basically free debt until things turn, and then it's not free, it's an anvil around your neck.
Right, I agree. That's,
Dave,
again, that's my point.
Yeah, Dave and Jim, Dave and Bill, points are made. We're gonna move on.
I complimented
Jim,
Bill and set him off. Yes?
Jimmy, this week the Consumer Price Index reported a fairly large surge in inflation. Nobody saw it coming. And the market response seemed to indicate they didn't believe the Fed was going to address inflation. In other words, they weren't going to raise rates. They weren't going to withhold monetary support. Gold recovered a bit, and it looked pretty good there for a bit. And it looks like the stage is now set for a larger move. But I don't want to get – it might be even sucker bait. I don't know. But what do you think will happen from here, Jim?
Well, the GDX has broken out of a long-term downtrend, and that can't be ignored. So that's the first sign that the gold shares have gotten some life into them. And I've always felt that the gold shares know more about gold than gold knows about itself. And it will take a breakout and a significant move in the gold shares for gold to take out the 1918 and move through 2000. So what you've got is the first spark of that possibility. All right, now the figures have to be looked at, and I can't believe that professionals are as dumb as some of them are. But we're looking at year-over-year figures. What was last year? COVID. Okay. What is this year? Everybody's coming out of the box whether they like it or not. What do the year-to-year figures look like? We're in a frigging boom. We're not. Okay. So the inflation that you see is simply a reemergence of demand for goods which are in relatively short supply, like lumber, because the Greens don't want you cutting trees down, do they? And they certainly don't want us to drive around Detroit iron, which I love, and or Windsor-made Fords that sound beautiful, but they drink gas and they make smoke, and they're going to kill us all. We're going into a warming of the climate that's going to take out everybody. We're going into an ice age. That's going to be the biggest shock they ever got. Just take a look at the length of winters, okay? It's freezing out there today. I'm in Connecticut. The inflation you see is only going to increase to hyperinflation as demand picks up as a product of the trillions that are being pumped into the economy, and as Bill said and David commented on, the giveaways. Okay, that's going to help. So you are in an inflationary spiral in general commodities, exaggerated by the fact the figures are year over year. Like employment, more people, more jobs, and that's a year over year comparison. Okay, there weren't any last year, so if there are any this year, we're in a boom. So that little added characteristic to reading the figures is going to take a modest inflation to hyperinflation in the figures. So that's what you're seeing. And it's real because lumber costs now outrageous price for lumber. And every product you buy, go into the store, look at the cost of food, meats, okay? And we're not supposed to eat meat, are we? We're not supposed to be cows around because cows' flatulence causes the warming of the planet. Well, isn't it going to be amazing if these guys are fighting the exact wrong thing? And there's a reasonable possibility that is exactly what they are, fighting the wrong thing. And now they got themselves set up for a hyperinflationary statistical environment when hyperinflation is going to happen anyway. Can you imagine what that's going to look like? That's where we're going. And they're looking at year-over-year figures, so they lit the dynamite a little early. But the dynamite is there, and it's coming. You're right. I mean, you're absolutely right. I think, Bill and David, you're absolutely right in both of your arguments. A New Yorker is a New Yorker, man. I had a place in Florida. I want to get out of Florida because it's full of New Yorkers. Especially when I'm in line at the delicatessen. Somebody walks in, knocks the guy in front of me out of the line, and starts ordering. You've got to know it's a New Yorker, okay? I said to Barbara, I said, "You get me out of this place. I don't like New York, and I don't like Miami. I want to get out of here." I was in Coral Gables, Miami, the crime center of the world. Okay, only back to New York now, which is vying for that title over Chicago. Well, that's my answer to it.
Bill, I read this week that the difference between cryptocurrencies and gold is that there isn't a machine to place caps on trades. In other words, there's no Crimex. Bitcoin specifically doesn't have and really can't have an organized central player pounding it down every week. And, the old 2% pound, well, what they did with gold is they'd pound it down 2%, then 1%, then they'd leave it steady for a short period of time, and then they just dump on it. The thinking appears to be that Bitcoin wouldn't be allowed to go unmanipulated unless there was a plan in place to just remove it completely at some point in time. With that contrast, Bill, between what they do to gold and what they don't seem to be able to do to crypto, give me your thinking on the current situation in cryptos and gold.
I'm going to disappoint you with this answer because it's going to be really short.
As long as it's not, I quit, okay.
No. Gold is real. It's real money. You can hold it in your hands. And Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, it's a perfect accounting system, but it's a perfect accounting system of nothing. It's digital air. The end.
Only the divine is perfect.
Exactly.
Yeah, that went well. David, you guys, for those people who say that we're a broken record and we always agree with each other, this call we should have a stake in the ground about this call. David, George Orwell once said, "In a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act." I have always taken that to heart, and the censoring process that's taking place is really pretty incredible to me. If someone would have predicted what's taking place today in the press or in the markets a few years ago, they would have just been laughed at. But today, Dave, it appears that people might be awakening just a bit. Now, I know you think they're asleep and they're going to stay asleep or go back to sleep, but the truth is that our money is continuing to be diluted, and the truth is that our financial systems are in serious trouble, and it's going almost unnoticed. Dave, the markets hit new highs yesterday. To Dave, what does that really mean?
It means exactly what I said in the first answer. Denny, the public wants to hear that I'm going to have 2.2 beautiful children. I'm going to have a 4,200 square foot house, 2 SUVs, preferably Audis or Mercedes. I'm going to make 6 figures, so my wife, and so we're going to go to private camps, and we're going to live a life of luxury. And that is exactly what the market is telling everybody they're going to do. And as long as that is what they tell the public are never going to jump up and down and scream, "This game's rigged. That stock's a piece of junk." They'll all look at me for saying that and saying, "You're just negative." I'm not just negative. I'm a realist. If I'm in the middle of the woods, I don't know where I am, it's dark out, I don't have a compass, and I don't even have a penknife, that's not a pessimist. I'm a realist. Right now we have an issue, Dave, and you better figure something out. As long as they keep telling the public that this paper statement is golden, no matter what happens, a pandemic could sweep the country and the government's going to take care of you, they're going to send you money. They're going to send money to every single group that may have ever been harmed by this pandemic. They're going to pass out money to the corporations. We're just going to give you everything. Who is going to argue with that, Denny? Who other than us are going to sit down and say, "Well, that makes no common sense"? Well, everybody's going to look at you and say, "You're a party pooper. You're a party pooper. You don't want Bitcoin to go to like $1 billion, and then we could all be trillionaires because there's $1 billion and their life will just be good." It's not how it works. That's just not how this planet functions. I mean, nowhere in nature, nowhere in the history books is that how this functions. It's a giant psychological operation being run on us, and they're using fiat currency to do it. I sent you a quick, short note. we had a conversation about how long gold has been being mined on this planet. It's been a lot longer in some people's opinion than 5,000 years ago. There's an individual, if anybody chose to look him up, named Michael Tellinger. Michael Tellinger is a very bright individual, and he has information and records that would indicate gold's been being mined on this planet for at least 100,000 years. And that is because gold is real money. Never, never, ever do you hear the news media talking about this bubble and people should be putting their money in gold and silver. You should not be blowing your money, because the propaganda emits from the box in everybody's house. And nobody's going to argue with a box that's telling you, don't worry, be happy, there's money coming. What that box will do is divide the public, though. Because as long as the public's divided, they can't figure out who the magician really is. And again, everybody knows I stay away from politics, but to see the news this week that the new administration is ending the Afghan war in September, I'm jumping up and down saying, well, I thought the previous administration was the one who really should have gotten credit if the war was going to end. But in fact, it's not ending on the end date. Now it's going to end. It's like the alcoholic. I'm going to quit drinking, not this May, maybe in September. So, again, it all emanates from the boxes in everybody's house. It seems to work country to country the same way. They control the narrative. And the narrative is stock market going up, life is good. Stock market going down, life is bad. Again, the bubble's here, and until the pain is felt, it won't stop, Denny.
Jim, even with substantial premiums over the paper market, from what I'm tracking, and I don't have the information that Bill does, we'll get to that in just a bit, but the large commercials are really struggling to get deliveries of silver. It's just in such short supply that everybody appears to be scrambling. They're short on their deliveries, there's back orders, but there's no reliable source of delivery. Jim, the metal just isn't flowing in the markets. What do you think is really taking place right now, Jim?
My relatives over the last 10 years have been cleaning out the physical gold and physical silver market. Okay, they've been accumulating it, and there's a book written called Our Crowd. That's my relatives. It's the old money of Europe, which has for the last 10 years analyzed the situation and decided that paper money makes no sense. Let us buy physical gold and silver with pieces of paper. And, that is what has taken place. The above-ground supply, which everybody thinks would wail out into the market price-wise, isn't wailing out into the market price-wise. And the paper gold market is a complete Potemkin city, a cardboard city without reality, that is totally rigged for the benefits of whatever whatever is trying to be sold to the civilization at the time. Now, Bill, you had a new definition for QE. Do you recall our conversation on that?
We had so many.
Okay. What you said was quantitative equities. Okay, QE. Which,
right.
And what are they doing? They're debt monetizing and equity monetizing now. Okay.
Right.
So you hit it.
Yep.
You hit it right on the nose. So equity monetization is when you monetize your debt to buy equities. And the central banks of the world are all in the Amazons of the world and the Teslas of the world. And the things that are making the market look strong are the stocks being bought no matter what happens by the central bank. So we got a new one. Part of the huge $1 trillion balance sheets that we have here in the U.S., as well as other countries, is made up of the high flyers. And the indices is the easiest thing in the world to rig, because all you need to do is to come in after the market dropped 900 points and buy the indices so the next morning the indexes open up $75. and incomes, and then the central banks come in, and then the momentum changes, and then the hedge funds come in, and then Joe Sixpack comes in at the end. So we've got a new thing that Bill came up with, which is taking quantitative easing to quantitative equities. Or if you want to go further, quantitative easing of equities. Okay? So,
and that creates a problem, Jim.
Sure.
The problem is that these central banks now hold equities as backing to the currency, if you will.
And what happens when that?
It's like
what you will.
I read this, probably 15, 18, maybe 20 years ago. It was a picture of turtles stacked up on top of each other with the bottom turtle up in the air. And the explanation was turtles all the way down.
Yeah.
Problem is there's no foundation. And that's what they're doing. That's what they're doing with the money supplies or the currencies is they're backed by garbage. They're backed by derivatives. They're backed by CMBS back from 2007, 2008. There's still a lot of that on the books.
And the game will go on until it ends, but end it will. Okay, and that end is
badly.
And that end is the year-over-year figures, which is only going to accelerate hyperinflation. But because we've been arguing a bit today, let me give you either this is going to turn into an argument, if you don't mind, Denny.
I don't care, buddy.
Let's go for it.
Or it might be a joke. Okay. When you were talking, David, about Michael Tellinger, okay, the expert on vanished civilizations in South Africa, and he's recognized as an absolute authority. His dating of gold mining at a certain gold mine where they found artifacts that could be carbon dated, that the idea that all of this started in civilization 6,000 years ago is nuts. It started hundreds of thousands of years ago, just like you said, 1 million, if you will. And now we've got the Navy telling us that UFOs are real and showing us pictures. And there's a June report coming out which is going to drop the UFOs as real on the people. So what do we have? What I think is anatomically incorrect, nude gray guys mining gold to purify the atmosphere back at their gray, stinky home planet. If you want to get, if you wanted to get people all upset, and COVID wasn't around, how's that for a start? Now,
that would freak people out.
And that's what you got. I mean, they are not anatomically correct, because we see the pictures of the nude guys from Venice Beach in California. And they're gray, they're not green. They don't want to break your heart on that one. Mining gold 1 million years ago.
Hey, Jim, as long as you're on that subject, you still got to ask the question, why have all these world leaders gone to Antarctica?
Because they finally found out we didn't come from monkeys. And that has religious connotations to it, too. How about we're all gold miners? We were trained to be gold miners. Hey, there's a bullish idea on gold. But that's what's coming out. In June, they're going to confirm, there's going to be a government report confirming what the Navy has told us already, that there is intelligent life. And they're looking at us because when they hover over the back of our ships, what they're doing is showing themselves to us. So the first contact is coming very soon, if it hasn't already been made, according to this report. That's going to get people nuts.
Bill, why don't you go ahead and...
We lighten up the conversation a little here.
Yeah.
Yes,
Bill,
exactly.
Please bring us up to speed on the current physical markets. What's available, what's not, what should listeners stay away from, what's going on in the physical markets?
Interesting. This past week, Miles Franklin ran out of junk silver twice. People are beating down the doors for silver. Gold is available. It's still tight. with the pullback in the price of gold, premiums generally expanded, so that the pricing of getting a real gold coin in your hand really didn't. I mean, if gold dropped, call it $300 from the peak, and I think with the premiums expanding, you might have seen a $150 drop in price to get it in your hand. So, in other words, the paper price dropped, but the premiums expanded, so that the final price in your hand was less, but nowhere near the paper drop. And you are now, again, beginning to see premiums really firm up in silver. Very well could be the May delivery month is going to be a humdinger for both silver and gold.
What's your thoughts on
sorry,
the commercials?
not May for gold, but for June. June would be gold and May would be silver. But the premiums, I mean, I don't think you can find an eagle, a silver eagle, anywhere in the country at $10 over spot. It's mostly like $11 over spot. And this is, we got down as low as maybe $9.50, and then the premiums just started ticking up like 25 cents a day.
What's your thoughts on the commercials? Is what I'm hearing about failure to deliver on the commercial side, they just don't have it to send to the commercials. Am I hearing the right thing?
Well, the commercials have definitely lightened up their shorts. There's no question about that. The failure to deliver event can come from anywhere and immediately engulf everywhere. Is it the Perth Mint that fails? Is it Kitco that fails? I mean, there was talk this week, linking the same problem or perceived problem at the Perth Mint with Kitco. Is it COMEX? Is it LBMA? I mean, LBMA, I think I saw where pretty much like 85% of all the silver that they say that they hold is already encumbered. So you shouldn't even consider it as metal that could go to market because it's already owned by somebody. If you look at the registered inventories in COMEX, one big month could wipe them out. So a failure to deliver, I've been adamant all along that it's going to happen, and I'm convinced it will happen. I just don't know where, what's going to be the spark, what's going to be the first domino to fall. And that really doesn't even matter knowing who or where. Just knowing that it's going to happen is enough to light a fire under you to prepare.
David, the last question of the day. I want to read a Tyler Durden quote. Tyler Durden, I believe, is the author behind Zero Hedge, but I'm not positive. But he said the majority of the electorate have voted for generous gifts from the public treasury. They want free education, free food, free phones, free transportation, and free dogs. They want free forgiveness. Most of all, they want free money. Many representatives are pushing the president to give the voters what they want and what the politicians have promised. Specifically, they want more STEMI checks. Dave, this week the CPI jumped to 2.6%, and that seems like the canary in the mine. So how soon will it be before the real reality sets in with the majority of Americans?
Again, you're asking a guy who doesn't think they could wake up, Denny. They don't wake up till after that horse is out of the barn and ran away, and they're going, who didn't close the door? I'm a cynic. I've been a study of the public my whole life. Let's just look at a couple things. Bernie Madoff started in 1978 and told everybody, he promised them a fixed rate of return of as much as 13% on a stock portfolio. That went on till 2008. I mean, it collapsed. J.P. Morgan was in on it. everybody was in on it. Did it change anything in the market?
Not a thing.
Okay, so this week, as you're saying, Bank of America came out and said that the chart we're looking at, where our market's up 76%, this is the worst pandemic since 1918, and we're up 76%. It's the third largest year-over-year rise in 100 years. Denny, think about what, I read the newspaper and these stories, and I'm like, has the public completely forgotten? Greenlight Capital, David Einhorn, the market is fractured and in the process of breaking. Dogecoin, which, as Bill brought up, was made up as a joke on Bitcoin. The Dogecoin billionaire's worth $15 billion now. And again, and I go back to this is all going on, and the media just has everybody look at it. You don't have Dogecoin? Oh, my God, you must be a fool. Look at your neighbor's a billionaire off Dogecoin. And look down the street. He's a trillionaire off Bitcoin. And, oh, my God, the other guy left his money in the index at the stock market, and he's up 76% since last year. And I look at people and I say, did we defy gravity? And I missed, all of a sudden they repealed all the laws of nature. The public, in my opinion, will not change. The hand grenade's in their hand, the pin's out. They'll pass it around looking at each other, telling each other it's the golden calf. We have been brainwashed since birth. We can't escape it. It's a flaw in humans. They know we all want to be happy, successful, and live a happy ever after life. And that's normal. Yes, I get it. But we've taken it to the point of insanity now. And as you're saying, everybody thinks all we need to do is print money and pass it out. And of course the politicians are going to vote for doing that because that's going to make their constituents happy. And they're going to get reelected and keep running the biggest Bernie Madoff scam of them all, which is why I believe they could never let Bernie go to trial, because if I was Bernie's defense lawyer, my defense would have been, I'm doing nothing different than the governments of the world are doing in the whole Western financial system. And I don't think anybody could argue that point, could you?
No, sir.
So that's my answer. That's why I don't see this changing. And I think they know they can agitate us as much as they want. And the bottom line is we won't ever vote against giving ourselves free money. It's the problem with the system. So I'm a cynic, and I'm not going to change. It serves me well.
When you say, every time you say I'm a cynic, all I want to say is no shit. Oh, goodness me. All right. Bill Holter, do you have anything else you want to share with us today?
Yeah, I guess I'll just kind of pile on what Dave just said. I mean, everything is bullshit. The markets are, I mean, everything is false. Everything is put together from or propped up with free money. I mean, anything and everything you hear in the news is bogus. For instance, I guess this week there was a lawsuit being brought by researchers, professors, highly respected people. They're suing the CDC because they tested 1,500 positive COVID tests, and not one of them contained COVID. They contained either influenza A or influenza B. I have no idea, like that was just on my last answer, I have no idea what the spark's going to be, where the dam is going to break. But people have a real rude awakening coming when they find out everything's bullshit.
It's getting close, Bill. That's my thought, is that it's getting really, really close. David, do you have anything else you want to share? All right. Jim, do you have anything else you want to share? Do you have anything else?
That was he just answered you.
Oh, my God. Go ahead, Jim.
This is becoming a comedy channel on the show. I have something else I'd like to share with you in the area of BS. Watch out. The nude, gray guys, not anatomically correct, are coming. And they're coming in June. Okay? So it even gets more comical. But look at the build-up. See what's going on out there.
Yeah, my birthday's in June. That'll be an interesting birthday present.
Yeah, little gray guy's going to come down and take and ask you where's all the gold.
Yeah, he's going to want to ride in my gyroplane. That's what he wants.
Oh, that's it.
All right, sounds like David dialed back.
I wish I could.
Yeah. Yes.
If he asked,
like
take me to your leader, where would you bring him?
Where would I take him?
What leader?
That's my point.
I'd take him to Frank.
David, I asked if you had anything else to share, and all we heard was your disconnect sound. So I hope you didn't.
I went to unmute the phone and hit the get rid of you button, and I got rid of you. No, let's just leave that down. I don't want to sound so pessimistic, but as I watch every single day, week, month, and year this go on, it's like, I don't know if and I'm going to use an analogy, and I hope I don't offend anybody. If you've ever baited coyotes or wild animals, whether it's you watch pig hunts, they are just dumb animals, for lack of a better word, and they eat, and they get used to going back there and eat and eat and eat and eat. And, if you watch, how professionals eliminate packs of wild hogs, feral hogs, they have a complete understanding of how that whole pig colony works. And sometimes they'll have to bait these things for weeks or months because they have to get the smartest pig, because if not, the process will start over again. I hate to use this analogy with people, but there was someone who used the term "we're useless feeders." And as I watch the public walk back into the same trap year after year after year, generation after generation after generation, I'm saying to myself, do they ever learn? And then I go back to the hunting videos and I say, maybe there's just a genetic flaw that's exploited by someone smart enough to know how to continually bait the public in this case. And I believe I know what that is. And I believe they know how to pump the hopium into the people. And I'm not, as I've always said to you, Denny, I'm not a hoper. I'm a planner, strategic. And that's why, like Bill's saying, when 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, I immediately go nuts. When 2 + 2, they tell me equals 5, I go even more nuts. And I've been watching this go on, and just as you're telling me the story that, Zero Hedge Tyler wrote, we're all sitting here. We all know hundreds of people who have been rescued with this 76% return in the stock market on the worst economic numbers ever. So, how can you be anything but pessimistic or ignorant? I don't know. And I don't mean ignorant, just ignorant as to what's coming. And on that alone, how can you be happy knowing that what we're talking about ultimately has to unwind? So, it's not that I'm pessimistic. I am just a hardcore realist. I've always run business.
You're realistic, Dave.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, man, I had to make payroll. I had to have insurance policies. I have a lot of people's lives, 60 people who required every week to eat based on me performing every single day. And, again, that makes you very hardcore. You have, you try to have no emotion except I'm putting my head down and I'm going to grind harder and smarter. So that's what I'm trying to instill, because as we're sitting here saying, we're in such uncharted territories, this is ridiculous. It's like being in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean in a canoe with a half-broken paddle and thinking you're having a great time because your 401k is up 76%. But
hey, Dave,
yeah.
hog trapping has changed since the advent of the Internet. It used to be you had to you had to sit somewhere with binoculars. Now you could just lay in bed and your phone dings the picture. Well, most people's phones, not my phone, but your phone dings, the picture of the herd of hogs comes up from the camera next to the trap, and when they're all in there, you just press a button and then go back to sleep until tomorrow morning. Then you round them up and get rid of them.
I'm very aware of that, and I don't want to be that graphic. But again, yes, that's my point, Bill. Now that they have the internet, they could round us up just like hogs. They don't even have to surveil us. We do it for them. It's intense. I look at things very mechanically, and I've watched them set the hogs up. And as you say, when they decide to throw the switch and then they come out, and whether they shoot us, again, they take control of the finances. Obviously, you get my point, Bill, because you know exactly the videos I'm talking about.
Yeah, you press the button, the whole circular thing comes down, and that's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen to society as a whole.
Absolutely.
They're going to ring fence it.
Exactly. Whether they do it with finance, but they're going to do it. I don't have to know how. I just have to know what the ultimate plan is, how they're going to get us there, and then I have to be the pig who gets out of that fence. And again, my plan is to never go into the ring fence. So that's the purpose of gold and silver physically. I'm trying to stay out of their ringed fence.
And that's the purpose of GOTS, to not be in their system with as little as possible.
And he's the guy who taught me it. So him and Harry Schultz.
God bless Harry Schultz.
Yes. I've trained by the best.
He was the firstest with the most.
Well, I guess that's it for us this week, folks. Jimmy, you got anything else?
All right. No, I'm just going to tell you, watch out for the gray guys.
All right. Well, I'm gonna end today with a quick story. When Andy, my son, who is a wilderness EMT, took me up on Mount Rainier before we opened our business in 2002, we came in just before we hit the summit. We found this little prayer wrapped up, and I kept it, and I have always saved it for when I think the time is right to share it. And it was very simple. It just said, Heavenly Father, kind and good, we thank Thee for our daily food. We thank Thee for Thy love and care. Be with us, Lord, and hear our prayer. There's a lot to pray about, guys. And every week we say that money's not everything. It's just that having it makes it so much easier. There will come a time when we will all be pushed to our limits. And I hope that's farther away than what I think it is, but we will soon find out. Always remember that it is the people in our lives that are worth $1 million. Don't forget to tell them so. To my wife who listens to this every week and loves Jim and Bill and Dave, baby, I love you. Let's do another 48. And with that, we'll let you go, and we'll talk to you next week.